Mir dann auch ein bisschen zu. Ja, ja. Ja, alles gut? Ist doch gut. Ist doch Ja, das freut mich. Alles in Ordnung, oder? Oh.
Good evening and welcome to the third of our lecture series in the AAC workshop Konzerthaus Stuttgart. The brief of Konzerthaus Stuttgart is one of these urban projects where the demands of the city society go beyond a mere typology of a concert hall. A type of project Snøhetta is very familiar with. And hence I'm very happy for Jette Hopp from Snøhetta to be here with us today. And as the Director of Acquisitions and New Projects, she's probably best placed to tell us an inside view on how Snøhetta approaches these kind of projects. As an international critic and lecturer, she's also a great fit for our second interim crit tomorrow on the projects for Konzerthaus Stuttgart. When we asked her whether she wanted to come back to give another lecture at AAC, she responded promptly and said it's one of her favorite programs. Thank you very much for the kind words. We're thrilled. AAC takes learning before streaming, so I'm also thrilled that Jette brought some projects that haven't been published yet. And at some point during the lecture, we will cut off the broadcasting for you to be able to show them to us here in the room. Thank you very much for coming back to AAC, and please join me in giving a warm welcome to Jette Hopp.
Yeah, thank you for the nice introduction, also for having me again. I think I was here in 2018, so it feels not so long ago. But today I'm also very happy with the specific topic. That is also one of my favorite, of course, performance spaces. And as Enno also mentioned, this is one of our, maybe the typology that Snøhetta is the most famous of, since we have worked with this, or we had the opportunity to working within this typology since now over 30 years. So I have structured a little bit like that I will speak a little bit about our methodology, a little bit of our take on public space, the value-driven design, the content-driven design, and then I have included some references, and the last one I will show that is not published yet, so it will be a live introduction to this project. Apologies for those who are following the lecture online. So in the background you see the mountains. Is it an echo or it's only me who's... It's okay? Yeah, okay. In the background you see the mountain Snøhetta. So since over 30 years we have borrowed the name from a mountain, and we say Snøhetta is a place that nobody is from but anyone can go to. So this also says something about our company culture. We are not named after the founders, but it's really a team collaborative approach. So it started with a workshop between architects and landscape architects, and then over the years we have expanded within the disciplines, also interior, render and graphic design. So literally we go every year to the mountain Snøhetta together from all our studios all around the world. So it started in Oslo, but then over the years we are now around 300 people with the headquarters in Oslo. And then, as you can see, in New York and San Francisco, working with the Americas, and Oslo, Paris, Innsbruck, Hong Kong, and Adelaide. So working all over the globe. And these are some impressions from our studio spaces. Actually, we follow the same model everywhere. Try to... okay. We try to have it one space. So we try to not... now I think the sound is kind of on and off. No? Okay. So, and we try to sit on one floor, so we don't have kind of any hierarchy. So all the people get the same of space. Everyone can bring their opinion to the table. So we are working all over the globe, obviously, but what you will see when you look at our project, that they are really not driven by a stylistic preference. It's really born out of the contextual and analytical reading of the site-specific context, socially, culturally, environmentally. So the site-specific condition then also leads to that unique approach, trying to really find a holistic answer to the context, but obviously also to the program. So it also responds to this specific context. And since we started also in Norway, and we have this kind of Nordic approach to our project, it's also very value-driven when you think about Nordic architecture that has this kind of democratic and open and inclusive approach, and this is also something that we are striving for in all our projects in terms of public accessibility, and also to be able to establish a relation. So the built environment that we are introducing to a context. So we have also born out of that approach, developed a contextual method, and we were also, Snøhetta was a research object for about 4 years, where we were followed in our design method. And the objective of that study was whether there are any drivers that lead to innovation. So out of this publication, we are using these findings to develop our concept workshop method. So what we say is making the complex understandable, meaning we are inviting our clients where it's possible, obviously, spending a day with us in the office and to together develop what we call conceptual springboards. So it's more not really speaking about the architecture itself, it follows a specific sequence of sharing information, discussing the content, so you're really boiling it down to one essence. And we see when we are able to have these processes in the beginning of the project, we see also that the clients and the stakeholders also want to see this evolve, so you contribute to the beginning, so you establish a kind of common ownership to the further development. So we call this kind of in a post-rationalized way the collective intuition, and we have in our latest publication structured our project, as you can see here, what is really the core values of our studio. It's one, of course, the integration of disciplines, working interdisciplinary. Then it's the generosity and collective ownership, so every project should give something back to its context. And then it's, of course, that architecture is also per se a political discipline, because we are the true belief that architecture is one of the most important cultural expressions. So, and also the true belief that as an architect you can also impact society and contribute to its development to the better, hopefully. So I will start with the Oslo Opera, and also since performance spaces will be at the center of my talk today, but I think for me it's still the project that has this strong narrative. Of course, this was an open competition, and the brief said something about to develop a cultural monument. But for us, it was more translation into a social monument, because Norway, we have very young traditions when it comes to opera and these venues. So it was really to establish this public ownership by establishing this public accessible landscape, to lowering also the threshold between the cultural venue and the urban context. So you also have to think about, this was also the first step in a big urban development. It was a former industrial area in Oslo that was kickstarted with the opera, and over the years, if you come to Oslo now, you see that it looks like a standalone building, but now it's kind of almost built in within the urban fabric. So our interpretation was really then, again, what I said, to make this accessible, independent from if you have a ticket or not, to really develop a typology that is of a performative character rather than hosting performances. So it acts like a performance and introduces also to this kind of social encounter, as you see here on a very nice, sunny day. And of course, it has also put Oslo on the map when it comes to architecture development. Before that, it might have been more a blind spot, but it also kind of kickstarted a little bit the also the increased consciousness in society what architecture actually can contribute more than just being a building. So again, coming back to our Nordic values, we have since the 1950s in the Scandinavian countries, we call it the right to roam, meaning you're allowed to put up your tent anywhere in the landscape independent from private property. You can put up your tent, so landscape belongs to everyone. We try to add this thinking into our interpretation of an opera, so really using landscape references to lower the distance between, or to foster this public ownership. So for a long time, the opera was the only situation where you could touch the water in the Oslo fjord. So borrowing these developing out of these landscape references really to intuitively inviting the community to the and also putting the most valuable material on top of the building, the marble. So here on a sunny day, a nice stroll in the park, and also it's of course about the individual relationship to a building and the more public relationships, so to say. So it's really about allowing to touch the building, to have this kind of singular and the plural relationship. And also introducing this public character into the building, also really to experience it as a public space. So of impacted our choice of materials, we said you don't want to find anything here you want to see in your home. So really a very reduced material palette, wood, again referencing landscape, and also to have more longer opening hours, just really also that you can use the toilets. So also, as you can see, the wood, so the closer you get, so the wooden wall marks the transition between the public spaces and the venue performance spaces. So the closer you get into the core of the project, the main theater, the more refined the surface of the wood gets. Of course, this is the culmination. It's the heart of the project, the opera space. The main theater has about 1,300 seats. From the other perspective, and also the integration of art into the project. This is, it looks like crushed aluminium from the American artist Pei, but it's a really woven fabric. So all these integrated art, and also allowing for these kind of different contexts of performances, as you see here in the foyer, as a backdrop installation of Olafur Eliasson around the and also really as a canvas for different performances, and also really having this inviting character, as you can see here. This is, of course, a Nordic interpretation. So again, having this kind of also visual connections here, as you see from the ballet rehearsal rooms to the eastern part of Oslo. And then when the opera, from my point of view, performs at its best, you can have an open-air concert on top of the roof, and simultaneously you have an opera performance inside the building. So you're using the ground twice, literally. As an extension of that, Snøhetta worked with the refurbishment of the Times Square some years ago, and here it was really about giving the, it's actually one of the most visited contexts in the world, about 300,000 visitors each day. So our task was to transfer this public, very polluted space into a pedestrian area, really also giving it back to the New Yorkers, because this was actually a square or a plaza or context that was mostly visited by tourists, and the New Yorkers really, over a sequence of many years, as you can see here. I have to stand here because I have really an echo. It was really about really transferring it from a vehicle area into pedestrian area. And we also, and that's why I think it's also very relevant when we speak about performance spaces, because this Times Square is actually located like an open air foyer for all the Broadway theaters. So it also functions like a gathering space. So we developed these benches, as you can see here, because there were actually no place to sit, and they have all this kind of technical infrastructure that you need for in situ performances. And there are many of them. You can go there, if you spend there one day, you will see all these kind of different alternative situations, and they are, and you have all the, offering all the equipment there. And what I also think is very fantastic that the broadcasting of the Met happens here. So you have the premiere, so it's publicly accessible, and the Times Square really acts also like a public theater in that sense. And every 3 minutes to midnight, all the advertisement is turned into a 3-minute art light show. So it really turns out into a very versatile space. So what we always do with our public projects, we have something that we call post-occupancy study. So we try to study the impact also in time, whether our assumptions were right. And obviously this is not about a beautiful design. It's really about how can a transformation of a space also impact, as you can see here, obviously air quality, but also when it comes to the social economical part, what it makes, it transfers the entire context. So, so really having in mind, really using this as a kind of performative and stressing this character. And that leads me to the next project. It's a little different context, as you can say, as you can see. But Snøhetta was invited to do the stage design together with the Gåla festival, and this is a summer festival that we have in Norway. It's located at the, it's about 2 hours drive from Oslo at the lake Gåla. And it performs Per Gynt. And you might know that Per Gynt is one of our most famous plays from 1865. And we have this kind of, and by Henrik Ibsen, maybe somebody of you knows. So, but we tried together with the scenographer and the director to develop a scenography, and this is an illustration, where we worked with the infinity pool to really have the, yeah. So we developed this infinity pool setting, really because the aim of the director was to get the audience into the play. So we brought the lake closer to the audience, and as you can see here, it's a really beautiful. So I recommend everyone, when you are in Norway at the summertime, really try to get a ticket. Obviously, this was before COVID. But it's a marvelous experience, and also how it's kind of used within the different scenography, the reinterpretation of the play. It's a fantastic setup, and really using all the techniques of scenography and using the landscape as a broader reference for the play. So the same scenic techniques we also implemented in our underwater restaurant in Norway. So here it's about, of course, obviously it's underwater, but so you use the view also as a kind of sceneric setting, but on the other hand, it's also like a scene for dining. So really also using these tools like a stage set, how you kind of come from above ground, underground, using light, using the color palette from warm tones into cold tones, really creating this kind of visitor journey. So the same kind of thinking also is embedded in our reindeer pavilion in Norway, in Hjerkinn. So the only purpose of that building, it's our smallest public building, it's open in 24 hours, it's to give shelter for the observation of the reindeer population that is in the Dovre area. But again, also when you think of it as a performance space and really creating this kind of scenography for this experience, this is something we work with very consciously in all our projects. It's really also to celebrate, of course, the beautiful landscape, but also really working with this kind of thinking as a different approach to what you would normally do. So I have now collected a series of performance spaces in a literal sense. Most of them are still under development. So I tried to curate very different formats, because I understood also from you, as you have now as a study task, it contains a lot of different challenges. So I tried to give you a wide spectrum of projects. So we start with the Shanghai Opera House. That is a building we have. It's a kind of extension of our thinking. It's in Oslo. It's an upscaled context, so to say. Of course, it's not in Norway. It's in China, but it's in a very similar context at the Huang River in Shanghai, which will be transformed into a new Expo zero carbon neighborhood. And also the opera was the first kind of building to kickstart that development. But it's all upscaled, so when you compare it in terms of size, this is double size, and also it has, of course, obviously much more different performance spaces. So we try to find, again, to contextualize the concepts to have this kind of one movement to then distribute all the different performance spaces under one roof, so to say. So you will recognize a little bit the same thinking regarding the accessibility in public space. Here it was also to bring people to the roof, and because we have different entrances to the performance spaces. So it's this big outdoor stair that is kind of inviting you into the different contexts. Here you see a view back to the foyer. Obviously these are renderings, but this is now under construction. And when you compare it size-wise, the Oslo Opera has about 1,300 seats. Here the biggest hall has 2,100 seats. Then we have one that is of the size of the Oslo Opera, and then we have several different more experimental theater spaces, and also a lot of different art programs. So it's actually more a cultural complex rather than an opera. So we have different situations. It's linked to the public transport system. So it's really a kind of a hub. And also when working with these interiors, we really try to find cultural references. So we try to clad all the balconies fronts, as you can see here, with red silk. I will take it to a completely different context, to the north, to the very, very north of Norway. Now you can see it's to Kautokeino, and this is actually where we are. We have borders to Sweden, Finland, and Russia, as you can see, Murmansk at the border. And the task was here to create Yeah, how can I, the best way to explain it, a kind of a cultural center for the Sami minority. I don't know how many of you have heard about Sami. Sami is it's a minority in Norway, but there are also populations in Sweden, Finland, and also in Russia. About 80,000 worldwide, and 40,000 of them are living in Norway. So the task was here to create a cultural center. And you have to imagine it's a minority, but they have a parliament, they have a president, and it's of course it's not a political in that sense, but there is a close exchange with the ministry of the different Nordic countries to really maintain and to secure this kind of unique cultural richness of this population. So these are, of course, ancient photographs, but it says something about the living culture, and also that many of them are related to the reindeer farming. So this is the competition proposal that we won last year. So this program contains a theater, education, a higher school, and also education related to Sami culture and reindeers. So it's actually a threefold program. So we try to organize the program around, as you can see, just find a kind of a focal point, like the bonfire. And also, what is difficult when you work in nature, it's not even a cultivated landscape, it's really a natural context, to find some references that are not too obvious, obviously, because you see here we developed kind of, or we borrowed a little bit the references from the reindeer bone, and sorry for that, these I didn't manage to translate it for you, but we tried to also to link different outdoor areas to the specific programs. So as you can see here the context and how it's kind of nicely placed into the landscape, having this foyer, and also here you can see the theater. There are two theaters here, one bigger one and then a smaller one for 300 seats, and the education program and the teachers area. But really also to find a language and also a roughness that works with goes together with the climate conditions. So we have this now, it's under, it's a schematic design stage, but it was for us really, we really worked, you see, it has this kind of simplicity. It has, of course, the overall shape, but it also has this very local contextual use of material. It's a wooden building, and of course we have this stone floor. Another project that we have under development is in France, the Théâtre Amandier de Nanterre. And what is interesting with this one is it's born out of a very radical theatre approach. It was actually born out of a festival, 1965, where this was in a circus tent. In 1971, the Théâtre Nanterre was transformed, got a national theatre status. So this was the original building. So we won the competition. It's a total refurbishment, but it's also about the reading of the this original character. It was really cutting edge at this time. It was radical in terms of scenography and which topics that were discussed here. So really trying to not transform the character, but really try to link it back. This was the existing situation, so it's about reimagining and reinvent le théâtre Nanterre-Mandier. So really try to reconnect it to the urban context. That was actually the task that we tried to work with. It was had a very enclosed character, So we really try to stress the connection with the city, but also to the adjacent park. So as you can see here, what this direct visual connection with the interior, really working with the foyer and the connection to the park with the new stairs, really making it as an accessible part of this context. This is a very simple plan, but just for you to understand, we have this 900-seat theater, and then we have a more experimental theater and a smaller theater. So it contains of 3 different stages that are all kind of linked together by this big foyer, and then all the stage design, the ateliers are, it's a separate building. That is a little bit blurry, but you understand here, you can see here how it really worked with this visual connection, opening it up, maybe a little bit like the Oslo Opera Foyer, really to try to make this, to get this pulse again, and to reconnect to this original character that it had when in its inception. Another example that we have worked with in Saudi Arabia, where the performance spaces is one component. It's and I think it's interesting, and it was on purpose that I showed you that I'm showing you a project of very different contexts. Of course, it's always the easiest way of working in a context that is more related to your own, and the more negotiation is required to get around the table to establish a common understanding, really find a common language, the more interesting it actually gets. So this project is in Dahan in the desert, and the task was, it's actually gathering of several public functions like cinema, theater, performance spaces, education, children's museum, whatever you can imagine. And we try to, how can you find a language for a typology for a program that hasn't been, that is kind of not really established in that context. So we started with the Roman arch, where all the represent the different cultural functions. So it's really about the dependency of each other, and the most important is the keystone, where we actually place then the children's education. So it's really about this togetherness and the importance also of culture in society. So here you can see the built result. It was opened in 2018, and you see the different components. It's one big landscape. You enter the building through here it's easier to say. So it has one big theater, cinema, different public amenities. You enter the building through then you come into this the plaza, which is kind of where the different entrance situation for the different programs and pebbles are. It contains a big library. It was the first public library in Saudi Arabia, and actually one of the directors, he had the biggest collection of Knut Hamsun, which is also a Norwegian, a very, very famous Norwegian writer. So some different situations, as you can see here. The museum also contains of 5 galleries where we are showing different stages of Middle East art. And you can see here the theater and the cinema for different performances. We have this oasis, outdoor-indoor situation, and also what is actually important that we were working on site. We always had 3 persons there through the whole period, female and male, and this is one of my colleagues. And also working with local materials. You might know Martin Rauch, who is very famous for this rammed earths, because we have, as part of the inner plaza wall, we have this big rammed earth wall working with local material. My colleague working on the building side, and also when you have a very strong concept, it's easy also to develop the sub-concept, call it. As you can see here, the facade material based on this kind of wrapping around the stones, and then actually linking, having this consistency between the original concept and the built result. Some situations from the facade, the big plaza, and this kind of indoor-outdoor connection. And what it's also a good example how you can also really how a project also or can also impact society. We had last year an exhibition of the Norwegian painter Edvard Munch. He's one of the most famous, or one of the most famous expressionist painters. So we designed these pavilions. But we also showed paintings that you would never imagine that could be shown in a context like such. So it's also naked people on these paintings. So it really shows that how you can slightly move also society when you have established the right context. So we have this landscape of the soul, so it's actually an Arabic. So what we can see in operating the cultural center, it's really a new young generation that is also programming the building, the leadership there. For example, this London Sorbonne artist, Dania Al-Saleh, she was awarded with the Artist Prize, or they have this film festival that really challenges what you would expect in a context like that. So also we had people from the organization working in our Oslo office, and also being almost only female working with this project. So they asked us finally when we came there, what's wrong with the Norwegian men? So it's kind of also adapting to that specific side. So now I have to ask you to stop the streaming, because this is actually in a project, and it's also very, for me, kind of touching that I can bring it here. It's kind of also a tribute. It's a concert hall that we won last.
Thank you very much for taking the time and effort to put together a lecture, especially for this occasion. Are there any questions? Oh.
Thank you. It's a nice presentation. And I have a question about the shape and not the shape. It's like each project, there are idea, a shape, but I think beyond this one, beyond the shape and idea, there's some principle, and that lead the design through the times. So what is the principle for your company, for the Snøhetta, during the time? Because your office was founded a long time ago, and I can see the style of the word is changed. How you defined it, define the principle of your design, and what is the unique thing of this principle. If I compare it with the other office, and what do you think your special things? This is my question. Thank you.
No, it's a very, I think, a very relevant, also very key question, because, and I touched upon it a little bit in the beginning of my presentation, I think, and that also has to do that our methodology survives also generations. Me, myself, I'll call myself the second generation of Snøhetta. It's really born out of this collective approach and teamwork. We have a very independent, how can I say, responsibility distribution when it comes to design. What is kind of core, and I think like an internal objective, is the design innovative approach. So it's first of all, of course, born of that collaborative approach between disciplines, and as you saw also when I showed you or tried to explain to you roughly how we work with concept development, really try to understand the contextual context and all the kind of embedded layers and complexity in and try to translate a lot of time in analysis and then try to translate, kind of get under the skin of a context, and then let it be born out of that dialogue that is also happening within the team. But really to come to the core essence of a task, and then explore it out of that contextual content understanding, not of a design direction. So I think that is really, it's a value-driven design. And then, as I showed you with our public project, also this inclusive approach, striving for accessibility, public ownership, giving something back to the context, and in terms of social sustainability, environmental sustainability, and so on. Really make it, it should be better than before. When you, yeah. Was that a long answer to your question?
Can you maybe, thank you for showing your presentation. Can you maybe go a little bit into detail what really makes a modern concert hall? I'm also referring to the flexibility you mentioned, that what different levels are there, what is a modern way to to make it really flexible and on different occasions or different events that happen in such a concert hall that you showed the last project.
You mean the theater technical approach, or?
like how can it be flexible in different events? For example, the hall itself, yeah. So one of the last slides was about
the different seating arrangement according to the different venue. Yeah, that's of course. I would go maybe one step back. Of course, we have to start with the ideal proportion of a theater according to the performance requirements. An opera is a completely different shape than a concert hall, because this is more about acoustics. It's not necessarily about the intimacy that you have with the opera, with sidelines and so on. So it starts from there. And what you see with this different seating arrangement, that has, of course, the overall shape has to have the capacity to allow this different performance, but it's also a theater technical related to the different equipment, so that seating that you can move out and so on. So it's about also the flooring. It's about, I would also say, a technical flexibility of the theater technical or the equipment of a concert hall. So it's a decision you make if you have seats that you can take out and store, or if you have a fixed arrangement, for example. It has to do with the requirements also that is embedded in the program.
Yeah, Jette, thank you. It was a great lecture. I don't really have the question, but what I really like in your two opera houses in Oslo and in Shanghai, that you really create this public space and you activate the fifth facade. I think that is a very great idea that that you really use a public building for music also as a come-together place, and you activate the fifth facade. I know from Shanghai that people are very shy in really stepping on the roof, but seeing your pictures in Oslo, they really use these, let's say, these events before, after music, or even on when there's no music too. So how do they use the roof? How is it used for the last year? So I would like to hear more about it, because it's something which interests our students. It's a fifth facade.
I mean, it's actually. I would maybe approach that question from an opposite direction. It's first of all, it's a non-commercial space. That is very important. So actually, we had some discussions also with the opera. They wanted to sell food, and so we really had to make this explicit. This is something that is accessible for all. It doesn't require any ticketing or anything, any restrictions. And then I would say it's used like when you see it from a Norwegian context, like a mountain, like an inner urban mountain. So you have a stroll there, you take your lunch packet, you go there with the children. Sometimes you see there's picnics on top of the roofs. It's really a casual use, and that is kind of unrestricted, as you can see from the skier. So, yeah, I think there's, and sometimes you have small performances. It's really, how is it used? In a very, like a destination. You go there with a family, you meet friends. It's sometimes you meet at the opera before you go somewhere else, like a kind of a cluster of unprogrammed activities. So it kind of invites to just test it, like a canvas, so to say. Yeah. And what is actually very beautiful, of course, we got a lot of emails and protest in the beginning. Why do you want to spend so much money for an opera, a public building? But then we got another one and said, I was so against the opera, but now I go every day, take my lunch packet and sit on top of the opera and enjoy the beautiful view. So it's, yeah.
What is the difference of the behavior in Norway or in China?
The question is what the difference in the approach to using the building is between Asia and Europe.
Yeah, I mean, we don't have so much experience yet since it's not finished yet. Huh? So but we expect, of course, as you also said, that they are a little bit more careful, they have much more respect, so it needs maybe a little bit more warming up phase, or changing them, as you, what I tried a little bit to communicate with our project in Saudi Arabia. So it's when the built environment also challenges your common behavior, so invites you to, just makes you curious. Maybe, so we will see. Norway, I mean, we are, we don't take us so seriously, so maybe it's easier to have such a building in a Scandinavian context because we just try, don't think so much often, so it's a different approach.
There's one more question here.
Considering your kind of social approach to design, would you say that in a contemporary concert hall, the foyer and the public spaces are as important as the concert hall itself?
Yeah, of course, I would start, of course, the concert hall has to be the state of the art, it has to perform, it has to kind of offer this, it has to have the capacity of a performance space. So I wouldn't kind of necessarily say that the other is, this is the reason why it's a concert hall. It has to offer the environment for that music experience. But on the other hand, it also has to offer something back to the community. So that's why I think the communal spaces are also possibility to also introduce new audiences to for example, a concert hall, to curiosity. It's part you can kind of also challenge and get other new users into a building, that so that the foyer also acts like a gesture of invitation to lower this kind of threshold between a kind of high cultural venue and someone who kind of feels a little bit distance according to that. So it has to offer something, yes. It has a different objective, so to say.
Jette Hopp, thank you very much again for concluding our lecture series on performance spaces in the context of our workshop for the Concert Hall Stuttgart. And thank you very much, all of you, for coming along and joining us online. And for you who are here, we also can go next door to talk further about what we heard and saw. Thank you very much.